Many believe that Islam spread solely through force and conquest. But history offers a far more complex and intriguing story. Was Islam spread during the 7th century driven by military might, or were deeper forces at play? In this video, we explore the truth behind one of history's most enduring myths and uncover what truly fueled the rise of an empire. The phrase Islam spread by the sword is often linked to the early conquests of the Islamic Empire, but this view oversimplifies history. Yes, there were military conquest, but is that the full story? Let's dive deeper into the history. The Rashidun Caliphate saw rapid military expansion under 4 caliphs, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Abu Bakr unified Arabia through the Ridda Wars and expanded into Byzantine-held territories, vying for complete authority after the Battle of Ajnadain. Omar led the most significant conquests, the most notable being his victory over the Sasanian Empire at the Battle of Qadisiyah and the capture of Ctesiphon. Simultaneously, he coordinated the subjugation of Byzantine lands in the aftermath of the Battle of Yarmouk, capturing Jerusalem and later Egypt. Uthman expanded further into North Africa, Persia, and Armenia, and deployed the Caliphate's first navy, seizing Byzantine holdings in Cyprus and Anatolia. However, internal unrest grew, leading to his assassination. In 40 AH, 661 AD, the Caliph Ali ibn Abi Talib was assassinated. His son, Al-Hassan, succeeded him, reigning for less than a year. However, after sensing a shift in the political scene, he voluntarily ceded his position to the general, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, who unknowingly and unofficially established the Umayyad Caliphate. By this time, the Islamic Empire stretched from North Africa to Persia, allowing Islam to spread, Persia to be overcome, and the Byzantines to lose control over their dominions. The Umayyad Caliphate expanded the Islamic Empire significantly, creating one of the largest empires in history. The conquests during this period covered 3 key regions: the West, North Africa, the Maghrib, and Iberia; the East, Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent; and the North, Byzantine Anatolia. The Umayyads continued the conquest of the Maghrib and North Africa, which had begun under the Rashidun Caliphs. They subdued the Berber tribes and captured key strongholds, the most prominent being Carthage in 698 CE. By 709 CE, all of North Africa was under Umayyad control. The Umayyads pushed eastward into Central Asia, defeating local rulers and incorporating Transoxiana, modern Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, into the empire after the victory of the Battle of Defil. They established a strong presence in several cities, including Samarkand and Bukhara. The Umayyad general Muhammad ibn Qasim launched a successful campaign into the Sindh region, modern-day Pakistan, capturing the cities of Dibal and Multan. This marked the beginning of Islamic rule in South Asia. Led by the Berber general Tariq ibn Ziyad, the Umayyad forces crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, defeating the Visigothic King Roderick at the Battle of Guadalete. Over the next 7 years, they conquered most of the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain and Portugal. The Umayyads continued their conflict with the Byzantine Empire. They launched several campaigns against Constantinople, the most notable being the Siege of Constantinople, which ultimately failed. However, the Umayyads captured parts of Anatolia and the Caucasus. The Umayyads also moved into the Caucasus, subduing the regions of Armenia and Georgia. While all these conquests did occur by the sword, many of the conquered communities viewed them as liberators rather than conquerors. Non-Muslims, primarily Christians and Jews, were granted dhimmi status, which allowed them to retain their religious practices and some degree of autonomy in exchange for paying a tax called the jizya. This arrangement was more tolerant than the often harsher religious policies of the Byzantines, which made many local populations more willing to accept Muslim rule. The writings of a Coptic Egyptian bishop named John of Nikiu being the ancient Greek name for the region of Zoyet Razin in Menufia, reflects this attitude. In his chronicle he writes, "And the Chalcedonians, who were the persecutors of the faithful Orthodox Christians, increased the oppression and grief of all the faithful, and they became intoxicated with the wine of impiety, and persecuted and beat the Orthodox Christians. But the God of vengeance rose up against them, for they had oppressed the whole Christian people, and brought upon them the intolerable yoke of their impiety." While military expansion is one part of the puzzle, the spread of Islam was also driven by political, economic, and social factors. During the early centuries of Islam, trade routes connected the Arabian Peninsula to regions as far as Europe, Africa, and Asia, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and beliefs. The Silk Road and Indian Ocean trade networks brought Muslim merchants into contact with diverse cultures, from the Swahili coast of East Africa to Southeast Asia. Around the 10th century, the Abbasids began producing paper, an art learned from their Chinese prisoners. They established a paper mill in Baghdad, and use of paper spread throughout the Middle East, North Africa, and eventually into Europe. Paper made books more affordable, and the desire for scientific knowledge urged the translation of medical texts from Greek, Latin, ancient Egyptian, Chinese, and other languages into Arabic. In regions such as Indonesia, Islam spread without any military conquest at all, instead thriving through merchant communities who integrated their faith with local customs. Moreover, Muslim rulers, particularly during the Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates, established administrative systems that were often more just and organized compared to those of previous empires. This political stability, combined with relatively low taxes for the non-Muslim subjects under the jizya system, made Islamic rule appealing. Many non-Muslims were able to maintain their religious practices and enjoy economic benefits without pressure to convert. In this sense, conversion to Islam was often a pragmatic choice for those seeking social mobility, political favor, or better economic conditions. The approach of tolerance and economic cooperation helped Islam spread far beyond the battlefield. The Islamic cities of Baghdad, Damascus, and Cordoba became centers of trade, culture, and learning, drawing scholars, artisans, and traders from across the world. The political structure of the caliphate allowed for cultural exchange and economic prosperity, which naturally encouraged the spread of Islam peacefully and organically. The message of Islam itself was another major reason for its spread. The religion offered a clear moral framework, pure monotheism, and egalitarian values that appealed to a wide variety of people. Beyond military and economic factors, the core message of Islam itself played a pivotal role in its spread. The theological appeal of Islam, with its clear monotheistic focus and message of social justice, resonated with many people across different regions. At the heart of Islam is the belief in a single, merciful deity, Allah, who calls for a direct relationship with believers without intermediaries. This simplicity, along with the promise of salvation for all who submit to God's will, made Islam accessible and understandable to a wide variety of people, regardless of their social standing or cultural background. The emphasis on equality in the eyes of God, including the fair treatment of women, orphans, and the poor, offered a powerful ethical framework that drew people in, particularly in societies where rigid social hierarchies had previously marginalized certain groups. Another key factor in Islam's spread was its adaptability and tolerance of other faiths. Early Islamic rulers in many regions allowed Christians, Jews, and other minorities to continue practicing their religions, contributing to a more harmonious integration of Islam into these communities. Unlike many other empires at the time, the Islamic Caliphate did not impose forced conversions on conquered peoples. Instead, individuals converted to Islam gradually and often voluntarily, drawn by its ethical teachings, social justice values, and the appeal of being part of a growing and influential community. Let's look at a few examples where Islam spread peacefully. To understand how Islam spread in diverse regions, it's essential to look at specific historical case studies where the faith expanded through peaceful means, as much as through conquest. One of the most striking examples is Indonesia, the largest Muslim majority country today. Islam reached the Indonesian archipelago in the 13th century, however not by invasion, but rather through the Indian Ocean trade routes, particularly those involved in the Indian Ocean trade network. Muslim merchants from Gujarat and other parts of South Asia brought Islam to the islands, where it slowly spread through the local trade hubs of Sumatra and Java. Over time, local rulers and elites began to convert, often for economic and political reasons, as aligning with Muslim traders offered strategic advantages. This process was gradual and largely peaceful, demonstrating how Islam could integrate with existing local customs and traditions, creating a unique blend of Islamic and indigenous cultures. Another important example is West Africa, where Islam spread primarily through trade and scholarship. Starting in the 9th century, Muslim merchants from North Africa traveled across the Sahara Desert, bringing Islam to the kingdoms of West Africa. In cities like Timbuktu, Islam took root not through forced conversions, but through its appeal to local rulers, who saw it as a way to enhance their political and economic relationships with the broader Muslim world. Berber dynasties in the Maghrib, like the Almoravids, gave Islam a new life in the region in the 10th century, after a century of chaos in the region, and they expanded on the large trans-Saharan trade routes. They not only adopted the religion themselves, but also promoted it through the construction of mosques, Islamic schools, and centers of learning. Later on, Mansa Musa would do the same in the Sudan, as Timbuktu became a hub of Islamic scholarship, attracting scholars from across the Muslim world. The spread of Islam in this region was largely peaceful, driven by the desire for knowledge, trade connections, and political stability, rather than military conquest. In contrast, when we look at Spain, known as Al-Andalus under Muslim rule, we see a different scenario, where both military conquest and cultural flourishing contributed to the spread of Islam. Muslim armies entered Spain in the early 8th century, but once the region came under Islamic rule, the focus shifted toward intellectual and cultural exchange. Under rulers like Abdurrahman III and Al-Hakam II, Al-Andalus became a beacon of coexistence, where Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived together in relative harmony, sharing knowledge in fields like philosophy, science, medicine, and architecture. Cities like Cordoba became centers of learning and culture, attracting scholars from across Europe and the Islamic world. While Islam arrived through conquest, its spread in Spain was more about cultural integration and intellectual exchange rather than forced conversions. We know of many Christian tribes that converted to Islam for political or economic reasons, but ended up becoming fierce defenders of the faith in Spain, such as Banu Qasim. In reality, the spread of Islam was far more complex than the phrase "by the sword" suggests. While military conquest played a role, trade, intellectual exchange, and the spiritual appeal of Islam were just as, if not more, influential. Don't forget to like, share, and comment as it helps with the YouTube algorithm. These videos take a lot of time and effort to make, so please consider pledging your support on Patreon so we can continue delivering animated videos on Islamic history from authentic sources.